Good morning. It is just after 8 a.m. on Friday, October 2nd. I'm calling to order this remote meeting of the Affordable Housing Trust Working Group. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the Open Meetings Law, Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 18, and the Governor's March 15th, 2020 order imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place, this meeting of the Affordable Housing Trust Working Group will be conducted via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. Specific information and the general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and/or parties with a right and/or requirement to attend this meeting can be found on the Town of Westborough's website at town.westborough.ma.us. For this meeting, members of the public who wish to watch the meeting may do so in the following manner: on Westborough TV, broadcast, YouTube, and the live stream on the website. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. In the event that we aren't able to do so, despite best efforts, we will post on the Town of Westborough's website an audio or video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive record of proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting. Okay. With that said, I'm noting that Hank, Steve, Ed, and I are present, along with John and Leah. And which gives us a quorum, and our citizen participants who have been extremely helpful in the process. And so our first order of, let me walk through the agenda very quickly. Our first order of business today will be approval of our minutes from our September 18th meeting. A community update with respect to the co-urbanized site. We'll go over outreach to boards, committees, and community groups. And if people want, I can walk through the updated outreach presentation. I've been editing it quite a bit. I did not get a chance to send it out to everyone in advance, so we can decide whether we want to go through that today or just have people review it independently. We will then, we shared out some discussion points with respect to the draft declaration of trust. And so we'll go through those final points, at which point we'll take our discussion results, place it in the draft declaration, and it will go off to town council for review and edits. Next on the agenda is the final draft of the analysis and action items report. One of our main deliverables back to the Board of Selectmen. And so we'll address any final comments and vote to approve and accept that. And then we'll talk a little bit about process in the special fall town meeting and a discussion vote on the warrant articles themselves. And then we'll address any other business next step and action items, and then we'll adjourn. So I'm not sure if we're going to need the whole 90 minutes. We may not, but we'll get moving through that. So the first order of business is approval of the minutes. Do I have a motion?
Steve Durrett, so moved.
Bain, second.
Okay, any discussion, any corrections? Okay, hearing none, we'll do the roll call vote. I'm just going to go in the order on the screen here. So, Durrett?
Durrett, yes.
Ed?
Bain, yes.
Hank?
Unmute, Hank.
Sorry, I have to unmute. Yeah, Roush, yes.
And Edinburgh, yes. So it is 400 for being present. Okay, so next on the agenda is the co-urbanized community update. I'm not sure if anyone noticed, but the Massachusetts Housing Partnership, who is providing the funding for the co-urbanized site and has provided us with technical assistance and access to their data services. They're running a 7 or 8 week webinar series on different aspects of affordable housing. The second in the series was about community engagement, and the the founder of Co-Urbanize and our primary contact at Mass House Partnership presented, and they used our Co-Urbanize website as an example of sustained community engagement and the ability to blend education and community feedback. I won't pull it up to keep things moving along here, but right now we've had 536 unique visitors. So that's roughly about, you assume some people have logged on from their phone and their computer maybe, like myself. But so it's roughly, we've had 500 unique individuals go to the site. 50 have signed up to follow and get our updates, which is a pretty high percentage. And right now we're over 100 comments and replies. And so we've had some good sustainable, we've had some good sustainable involvement and participation in the project. We still have another round of questions to place up to ask if we feel that would be a good way to further community engagement and feedback. And then I can pull up the comment topics because we're getting fairly good response to most of the questions. We can also provide additional updates. So today, after we vote, we'll post the finalized version of our document, both on our website, on the our webpage on the town website, and on the Co-Urbanize site, and place that as a milestone update, and get that out on social media as well, so people can start, reading where we're at and understanding where we're at. We'll do that also once we have a declaration of trust that's been reviewed by town council. We can post that as well and continue the engagement. So please continue to work our individual networks and encourage people to participate. One question I had is with the questions that John brought forth that we added, which are definitely of interest to the master plan committee housing group. I'm wondering if it would be good to take all of our questions and restructure them separately as a survey. We can do it in a simple Google form and provide that link out as well, so that if people just wanted to take the survey and get the questions answered, I think we could do that without, it'll enhance engagement, but it can also increase the number of responses and the amount of data that we can provide back to the housing group for the master plan committee. Any thoughts on that?
Are we looking at a survey to get feedback, or are we looking at a survey to influence?
I think I think the survey is for feedback, and we've gotten some really good feedback that that we've shared, that have certainly guided some of our work as far as our guiding principles. I think the feedback's confirmed our priorities that we identified, the 4 priorities that we've been working on. We've also gotten feedback with ideas that really are out of our purview as a housing trust and would go more towards the master plan committee, such as, changes to accessory dwelling unit zoning opportunities, expanding that type of zoning, the use of tiny homes or intentional, small intentional communities. And so I think at this point, most of the feedback we're looking for is, informative in a way of involving the community and building support. But if we can help. My
philosophy is don't ask questions unless you intend to do something about the answer. And we're not the housing trust. Our job was to get prepared for a town meeting and solicit support and get through the town meeting successfully. The next level of feedback really ought to be solicited by people who are the directors or trustees of a housing trust, and we don't have them yet.
That's true. My thought was more in regards to since we've built a presence, helping the master plan advisory committee's housing team gather some additional information.
Well, again, if they're the folks who are going to do something about it, then they ought to put together the questions and ought to take responsibility for replying and taking action. Okay, don't ask questions unless you're going to do something about the answers.
Okay. So John, if you guys wanted to, if you want help, I'm happy to help you put that survey together. And if you wanted to do that as with your team, we could certainly use our contact list to help promote it, but that it would be your survey and you would get the questions.
We have a meeting on Monday, so I can bring it up. We can't discuss it because it's obviously not on the agenda, but I can bring it up as something that we can talk about and then set up another meeting to actually get something back to you.
Okay. Okay, cool. Excellent. Okay. Are folks interested in having me walk through the updated outreach presentation? Or would you like me just to share that and provide feedback?
I'd be happy to just read it offline, Alan.
Okay.
I do have a question, though.
Yep.
It's kind of related. I mean, given that we've got, a month and a half or so before we get to town meeting, are we receiving any substantial negative commentary, or is there substantial indication that there's a block of folks who will oppose creating a housing trust or oppose transferring funds?
At this point, I don't believe we have negative feedback or any indication of opposition to it. When we look at the feedback on the Co-Urbanize site, the analytics, the sentiment analysis is, let me pull that up very quickly. Okay, our negative sentiment analysis is 4%, which represents, I believe, 3 or 4, possibly 5 comments. But the subject of those comments is more about the cost of, of rent levels, not about the trust or the activity itself. That's a good question because it's a good segue into the next item or subcomponent of the agenda, which is the outreach, and that we talked about and have done some outreach. So I'm gonna share a document so you can see it as we fill it in. We are on the there are many stakeholders and influencers that we want to engage. I can make that. Is that easier to read? Okay. So we are on the agenda for the Board of Selectmen. Earlier we had asked other boards and committees and organizations if they'd be interested in having us come speak to educate and obviously build support. And so we've received in the last several days, actually, we've received a number of invitations with dates and times. Hank helped arrange for Advisory Finance Committee, which has happened. And if they need us to come back specific to the warrant articles and the R&R, we can certainly do that. We got some good, I think we got some good support and some good feedback as well from members of the Advisory Finance Committee. So the question is, who would like to be involved in presenting and answering questions at these events? And so I'd like to just go through the list, and if people want to volunteer, that's great. If you're uncertain, let me know that you're a maybe, and we'll figure it out. And then as far as the presentations go, for those who are going to be involved, we can do, if you want, we can do a one-on-one session and do a dry run, just so that we're all comfortable with the presentation and sort of the process. So, so is there someone who would like to join me Tuesday evening at the Board of Selectmen's meeting? I'll be there.
I'd be happy to join you. I think I'm available.
Okay. Okay, next Tuesday at 11 a.m. we've been invited to record another edition of Frank and Mary in Westborough. This is the highly viewed Westborough TV program that's co-hosted by Shelby Marshall. Are there people who would like to to join me on that. And all of these are remote, by the way, so we're not gathering in person.
I'm willing to help with anything you might need. So anything somebody doesn't volunteer for, I'm happy to help.
Okay. So I think you just indirectly volunteered for Tuesday.
I guess so.
If you want to confirm that you can make it, that is fine.
I can do that. Yeah.
Okay. Next Thursday, the 15th at 3 p.m. is the next meeting of the Diversity and Inclusion Committee.
Just Alan, this is Ed. You have Tuesday, it's the 13th, and Frank and Mary is also Tuesday, but the 13th, right? You have
Yes.
the 14th.
Oh, wait, hold on. I will confirm whether that's Tuesday or Wednesday.
Okay.
I actually think it's Wednesday the 14th. Okay. Oh, thank you. There's the expert. So Leah, let me know if you're available on Wednesday.
Yep. Wednesday the 14th at 11.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. Thursday the 15th at 3 p.m. is Diversity and Inclusion Committee. Okay, I'll reach out to Amy and Jennifer as well, and Valeria to see if they're interested. Youth Commission would be next Monday, the 19th at 5:30 p.m.
Alan, if you want some, I'm willing to go with you.
Okay.
Or go and do it, whatever.
Okay, and the 20th at 6:30 p.m. is the Planning Board.
This is remote, right?
Pardon, Steve?
That's remote, right?
It is all remote, yes.
Yeah, okay. I'll go hold your hand on that one.
Okay. And then, Steve, you'll be at the school committee meeting on the 21st?
Yeah, I can't hide from that.
Okay. Okay, and then Tuesday the 27th at 3 p.m. Is the Westborough Housing Authority.
Alan, I can help you support that one too. That's not a problem.
Okay, and then November 3rd at 7 p.m. is the Civic Club. And I want to say, I think Val sent me a note that she could make that one, but I'll confirm.
Are they even holding a meeting? That's election day.
Yeah, they extended the invite for that day, so I'll double check. But okay, cool. Okay, then we'll have things covered. Thank you.
And if, Alan, since I'm only on once with you, if somebody can't make it, why don't you put me as in the bullpen?
Okay, happy to do it. Okay, so
I may be able to make the 15th. I usually have a meeting that goes until 3. All the other dates, I actually have meetings already. So it's the only one that I might be able to make if you need somebody.
Okay. I'm not going to go back and type again.
Yep.
Let me, I'm presenting. You can see how disorganized my screen can get. Okay. Excellent. I'll let you know. Okay. So that is our community update. So moving forward, discussion points on the Declaration of Trust. And I'll present those in just a second, actually. Okay, and so what I've done in our last meeting, we talked about having a version of the trust with final wording in it, but I thought it might be easier just to pull it out. And let me zoom out a little bit. And so, and some of the things that were highlighted by Hank in his review of a number of trusts is things we'd want to discuss, as well as some of the things that came up just over the course of our discussions at prior meetings. I sent out and shared a list of discussion points. So I don't know, Hank, do you want to take the lead and walk through?
Yeah, let me get to right.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, the first item is, hey, expanding the mission statement. Again, the template has a narrow mission statement. It doesn't exclude the stuff we talked about, but it doesn't emphasize that we're going to get involved in that area. So I mean, I personally have no problem with expanding the mission statement.
Okay. Any other thoughts or comments? Ed, Steve, Leah, John?
So Hank, when you're saying expand it, are you talking about workforce housing or?
I mean, it doesn't.
Tell us.
I mean, technically, it doesn't expand it, but it rather than just making it implicit, it makes it explicit. So making it more explicit probably helpful.
It matches the wording of our mission statement.
Right.
So the purpose of the trust would match the mission statement that we're presenting to the public.
I think consistency is good.
Okay, then I'll note that we'll go with the proposed mission. Okay. The next is in the section of the powers of the trustees. The next item, the next two items, but we'll do number 8 first. Hank had highlighted, which is really about, which would allow the trustee to become the lottery and monitoring agent for affordable housing and accept compensation for those services into the fund. The question is, do we keep that in or do we remove that? I shared some pros and cons.
The reason I put that in the first place is we don't really know where the future is going to lead. But in talking with folks at trusts, having the authority to do these things is good. You don't have to do them yourself. You can either delegate them to, we could delegate the monitoring and lottery to the town staff, i.e. the planning department and or the housing coalition. However, we retain the authority to step in and, and exercise a level of control. And my thinking was that we want these trustees to feel and be held accountable for managing this business over a relatively long horizon. Given that most of the development work that's done is going to include in perpetuity deeded restrictions on the activities with the housing, you want to be sure the trustees feel an accountability for doing that, and therefore they need to have the authority when they need to do it to step in and take action. So leaving that in there, they don't have to do it. They can delegate it, but they have the authority to step in whenever they need to. You're flexible.
Okay. And
so would it make sense to say to become or designate the lottery and monitoring agent? So
well,
again, why limit it? Even if you leave it leave it open-ended, they can do it themselves, or they can contract it out. But they're accountable. I mean, the issue is they're accountable for getting it done, and they have the authority to get it done. However they do it is their choice.
Right. So the way you become the lottery agent for an affordable housing sale or would be to be designated as the lottery agent by DHCD, right? And so,
No, I mean, when you do a development, you create a marketing plan, and as part when you do when you do a DHCD project, part of that is you have to have a marketing plan, and it's on a project by project basis. You designate who the lottery agent's going to be.
correct.
And you can delegate the work itself.
Right, and DHCD has to agree with the selection of the lottery agent,
Sure.
and lottery agents specifically have to meet certain certification criteria. So housing trusts can serve as the lottery agent. Westborough's Housing Partnership Committee has been certified to be a lottery agent. DHCD tends to use larger nonprofits, most notably MCO and CHAPA, as lottery agents, depending, they're sort of the go-to resources at the statewide level as well. So I agree with Hank. It's on the lottery agent side of things. It's something the trust would be able to do. It's actually a highly technical function, so it might be something they would delegate or subcontract even, potentially as a way of generating revenue, or would just let DHCD, suggest and recommend one of their preferred vendors, or involve the Housing Partnership Committee, but the trust should have the option to do that. As far as the monitoring agent, that right now, the planning department does most, and the assessor's office do most of the monitoring. But this is something that, working with them, the trust may want to take on as a role.
Alan, what I had in mind is that probably on an annual basis, the trustees at one of their meetings would ask the people, the town staff that's been designated, would ask them to just kind of give an overview of any issues that may have arisen concerning the properties that the trust has an interest in.
Okay, that's a reasonable thing.
But again, the trustees get to choose. I mean, if I would recommend to them that they choose some mechanism like that, allow the professional staff to do their work, but exercise some oversight and have some accountability.
I just said, I kind of like what John was saying, if for clarity, to show people flexibility, that we have some flexibility, and that we're not trying to necessarily do everything ourselves, that we have other agencies to help us. But
Yeah.
I can understand both points. I like to have more, I don't know.
I agree with Hank in the sense that the process should be left with the trustees. If there needs to be clarity, there could be a list of things that the trustees might do, but not to limit their authority and responsibility, because, as was said, things change over time. And so you need to have the central group be able to modify things in the process of how things change over time, and to, in effect, parse it out to different places by definition, then I believe that would be a mistake. So I agree with Hank.
Okay.
If I can clarify my original comment, I wasn't trying to change what the trust was going to do. I was just trying to clarify. I think Hank was basically saying what I was saying. They can do that. I was putting the clarification in so that 10 years, 15 years down the road, if there's somebody who, and maybe this isn't the case, but if there's people that are unfamiliar with the abilities of the trust, they don't feel like they need to be the monitoring or the lottery agent if the expertise isn't there. It's clear that they can designate that. But that's something that they can already do. So it's really just a clarification.
So you could change the to become to can act as. Take those two words out, put in the three words as can act as the lottery agent, lottery and monitoring agent, and you've got the same meaning. It just might clarify the intent.
I like that.
Okay. I'm comfortable with that. Okay, so we'll leave it in, but we'll, unless town council says no, we'll change to become to can act as. Okay. Next would be the power of trustees, number 9, which reads, at the specific direction of the trustees hereunder to monitor the expiring use of any affordable housing in Westborough. That aligns with Mass General Law. There's no requirement, again, that the trust provide that function. So it definitely allows for future options. And if the trust were going to take that on, it would obviously require close coordination with the planning department and the assessor's office. The reason is that you might want to pull it out is it may set expectations that we're going to do this, or be confusing as to who's responsible for this function. And so that's sort of the pros and cons of it being there versus removing it. I will say that in the process of back in January, in the process of preparing for the Affordable Housing Forum and looking at the status of affordable housing and the contracts and when they expire, we actually found 2 mistakes in the documentation from DHCD as far as units that they had as expiring, but that were actually in perpetuity. And so we were able to clarify and make corrections. So how do folks feel about keep or remove this one? Hank, you highlighted it.
Yeah, I just, to me, I, as a citizen, not as a committee member, but as a citizen, I have an expectation that this housing trust is going to worry about and take action to make sure we stay above the 10%. That means they need to pay attention to when various elements expire, the expiring of affordable housing restrictions. You want them to do that, so we ought to direct them to do that. They should, again, do they have to do that every month or every week? No, I mean, periodically they're going to ask the planning department or whoever the designated staff people are to give them an update on how we're doing with aligning with restrictions.
I agree with Hank. I think, every so many months, maybe twice a year, might be reasonable to touch base at minimum or ask for a report, what have you, from the planning board, just to make sure that we are being mindful and providing some oversight, if that's the right word, to ensure that we understand both like immediate and even looking down a couple of years, the expectation of what we're going to have as stock, if things are expiring, et cetera.
It can take from 1 to 5 years from conception to implementation of affordable housing units.
Yep.
So you really need to be looking ahead and saying, okay, what are we doing to make sure that 3 to 5 years from now we're not inadvertently getting into a risk position.
Okay, so am I hearing, and I'll check with Steve and other folks, I'm hearing consensus on keeping this power in the declaration.
Yeah, I agree. I agree for all the things that were noted. It is a response. The reason why we're creating this trust is to do these things. And so, the fact that other players have historically provided stuff, being town treasurer and the planning board, and maybe we might continue to do so, but the responsibility based on what we're trying to do here is to leave it with the trust. And so it's up to them to manage how they get it. And so I agree.
Okay, great. We'll keep that in. So noted. I'm just going to make it a little bit smaller. The next wasn't anything really specifically called out, but in reviewing the trust, in Hank's draft, he selected a very creative option for the number of seats. So I just wanted to highlight that this morning, make sure everyone's comfortable with it. In that the way the trust is currently worded, we need the minimum 5 as required by state law, but we can have up to 9 members. I know that this allows for more community membership, allows more room to add expertise in the future as the trust undertakes projects. It gives the Board of Selectmen more time to fill a vacancy, to make sure we get, appropriate expertise and committed individuals in place. Is pointed out in some of our prior discussions. I went back and looked at our notes, that if you have more members on the board who can take on tasks, then there could be less reliance on staff, less of a need for staff to do certain things. And we reduce the risk of a loss of quorum due to vacancies. So it's obviously a little more, it's always easier to find 5 people than 9, or 7 people than 9, but I'm not so worried about that. So, I'll start off the discussion by saying personally, I'm comfortable with the 5 to 9 variable. But I just wanted a sanity check with everyone here. I think it's a creative way that some trusts have given themselves a level of robustness and flexibility.
I would personally advise against 9. I staff 2 boards that have 9 members, and it can be a challenge.
But John, it's variable, right? You can have minimum 5. You can go up to 9, but you don't have to have 9.
Right. I'm just saying in terms of like the options that are before us, not necessarily 5 to 9. Just
okay.
I would advise against 9. The variable is fine. That one works.
But who's going to create the number? Is it what goes into the warrant?
No.
In other words, the board will say
The trustees. I mean, the trustees and the appointing authority have to do that. It says that what essentially operationally what happens is if you as long as you have 5, you can meet and make decisions and spend money. If the Board of Selectmen in their infinite wisdoms choose to appoint some additional people, that's fine. They become trustees. If the Board of Selectmen in their chooses not to act, I would assume the Board of Selectmen would take the advice of the sitting trustees as to whether they need more help or not.
Yeah. So what happens here is what we recommend, rather than any changes to the text, because the choice will be the Board of Selectmen's. Correct?
Well, they can't go. I mean, if we pick 7, they can't go beyond 7. If we pick 9, they can't go beyond 9. If we pick 5, they can't go beyond 5, etc.
Okay. Well, I guess to that extent, then, with that clarity, I would suggest I agree with John that in fact it should be 5. Having served on members greater than 5, it becomes difficult, particularly seasonally. People go on vacation, people do this and that. If they know that the quorum or the group is going to be 5, then they got to be there or not schedule the meeting, one or the other. So I guess I'm just saying that I believe a smaller number rather than a bigger number is much more efficient for getting things done.
I agree with Steve on the point of efficiency with smaller, but given the fact that it's really the selectmen's, they're doing the appointments, I would suggest we give them a bit more latitude. Obviously, they're going to listen, I would hope, to what the trustees say as they get moving along of what they feel are, is the right number. But it gives them a little bit more flexibility. I think 7 is a good number. One of the concerns I heard was, and I don't think it's well founded, but I did hear about well, how many people are controlling all this money or overseeing all this money, which could get to become significant over time. And sometimes having a little larger number of trustees might assuage some of those concerns, because they would feel that it would be more of a dampening or governing is a better word, effect. So,
Well, I guess after that thought, we have 5 selectmen and they spend $55 million a year. They also but they're not audited every year, whereas this group is, and the people are reappointed every year. So if it's misfeasance,
Steve, 3-year terms.
excuse me, okay, but people are appointed every year on a 3-year term. So anyway, the bottom line is, I think there's more control over the fiscal responsibility of these people than there is, for example, the Board of Selectmen. So I'm not worried about it. In my experience is crooks are determined almost immediately because people pay attention to this outside and inside. So I'm not worried no matter who we pick or how many numbers there are.
Just another comment. What I envision happening in a few years, there's going to come a time when Westborough has CPA. The housing trust can be heavily reliant upon cooperation from the CPA team. So you're gonna have a selectman who's a guaranteed appointment. You're going to want to have a CPA committee member as an appointment, so you have linkage, and you're going to want to have somebody who's tied to the planning department, probably somebody from the planning board, because the other critical linkage is to the planning side of the house. That gives you 3 seats. If you only have 5, you got two more available. If you go to 7, at least you have the flexibility to bring in some other resources from the community.
The more I think about it, I'm liking 5 to 7.
I could acquiesce to 7 as well on the basis of these points, but certainly more than that, is unnecessary, number one. And number 2, it's got to be an odd number, because then it's very clear what the quorum is going to be.
You don't want to have a 4-4 Supreme Court. I agree.
Yeah.
And there's nothing about flipping a coin in the declaration if it's a tie.
right.
No. No coin flips.
Okay, so have we landed on variable seats, minimum of 5 up to 7?
Sounds
I
good
like
to
that
me.
too.
Okay, excellent. So we'll make that change.
Oh, so we're not saying 7, we're saying 5 to 7?
5 to 7.
5 to 7.
To me, that seems like a 5-member board with 2 alternates, which usually works out well. But the problem with alternates is they feel like they're attending a meeting with no purpose. So if you actually make it a 5-member board with up to 7, those alternates, if they get appointed, can actually vote and participate. So I think it works out well, or will work out well.
Yeah, and there are some trusts that use 5, that have 5 to 7. And really for them, it's been, they try and keep 7 people on the board as trustees. But if someone drops off, there's not a rush, right? If it takes an extra month or 2 to find the right person with the right expertise to join, you still have a functioning board, and with the resources available. So if we've got consensus on the variable 5 to 7, we'll head in that direction.
I'm happy with that.
Yeah,
I am too. I think that's a wonderful idea to allow voting members, so that in fact you could have a positive vote of 7 sometimes. You could have a positive vote of 5 sometimes. I think that's a great idea.
Okay. The next section is about making amendments to the trust. As currently drafted, to change the trust requires a vote of a majority plus 1, so a supermajority of the trust. This wasn't something that Hank highlighted, but after we did receive in the presentation to Advisory Finance Committee, it was pointed out that when we look at the oversight rules that we've created with the concurrence votes of the Board of Selectmen, that, the question was, well, what happens if the trust ends up with lots of money or is looking at many big projects and we want more oversight? How would we be able to change the trust? And the answer is, well, the trustees would vote to do that. And so it was pointed out, well, if the trustees don't want more oversight, but the town does, there's no mechanism for the town to create more oversight. So, I'll ask Hank to chime in. He was at that meeting and heard the discussion.
Yeah, I don't, again, I mean, folks are concerned about the trust piling up money and such. The town has, the town meeting has control. They just stop giving them money. I mean, at any point in time, if the balance is building up, actually the Board of Selectmen actually has a level of control also, because they can just say, hey, we're not gonna support your agenda item asking for transfer of funds. So there's a lot of control over giving them more money if they're not doing anything useful. My personal opinion is I would prefer to see the Board of Selectmen step in and exercise their authority through their representation on the board and through the other mechanisms, rather than ask them to concur on trust changes. It's just most of the trust changes that people are going to make are technical, and they're not financially related.
Okay. Thoughts from others?
Yeah, I agree with Hank on that one too.
I agree. I think that's reasonable, because the BOS via the town meeting have the power of the purse within, certain parameters.
Ellen, if I remember correctly, we also have said that to acquire or to spend any substantial fraction of the assets, you need some Board of Selectmen concurrence.
Correct.
Correct.
All right. So the hypothetical was given, well, what if the trust had, if the trust only has $1 million, then that 50% threshold of sale is $500,000. But, the question is, well, what if the trust has $50 million in assets?
Yeah.
I'm
it's kind of like, who's the village idiot that let him have $50 million, right?
Well, you could do a lot of good with $50 million.
Oh, I agree, but I can enjoy that myself.
Okay, so if we're comfortable leaving it as is, that's fine. I think I would expect that question might come up on the floor of town meeting. So we'll just need to be prepared to provide the answer that we've discussed.
Again, I think we need to be fairly careful about allowing the town meeting to edit the trust document. I don't believe we need to share the trust. We don't need to hide the trust document, but we need to be sure we don't inadvertently ask for approval of the town meeting for the content of the trust document.
That is true. That is true.
I mean, the trust document wording and content and such is the purview of the trustees. I believe with advice and consent from the Board of Selectmen.
And town council.
And always town council, because it has to be legal. But the town meeting, being a legislative body, that doesn't really have the strong ability to draft, to oversee this kind of thing at this level of detail.
Right. No, I agree. I just think if a town meeting, if the discussion goes, we shouldn't create the trust because there isn't enough oversight, then we just need to be ready to explain the level of oversight we're including, and that's consistent with the majority of other trusts that we've looked at.
Right.
Well,
I agree. That's good.
Mass general law, and of course, everything that we're doing, and of course, the focus of town council will be, does it coincide with mass general law? So
right.
I think that's the answer for all these things. And hopefully a discussion with town council before the vote would simply be, it's yes or no on the concept. It's not on the trust documents.
Okay, excellent. So we'll leave that as is. And that was it. So I believe we've reached agreement on the content of the trust. There's only, from our conversation here, there's only one minor change to the wording of the draft trust that Hank put together. Hank, do you want to make that change, or is it okay if I go ahead and make that change?
Please go ahead and make the change. It's easier to have
Okay.
the documents controlled in one place. If I remember
Okay.
correctly, we were going to include the draft in the report out.
We will include the draft as an additional document in our report to the Board of Selectmen for Tuesday's meeting.
Right. Okay.
But more importantly, it will head off to Town Council
Yep, no, great. Yeah.
to start the review process from a timing standpoint.
It won't
That's
be
great.
included in the report that
It'll be a
we've
separate
developed.
document.
Yeah, it's not like an appendix or anything. It'll be a separate document that
So then
stands on its own.
if it's appropriate, Alan, I would move the committee vote to move forward with the trust document as amended in this session to town council review.
Hank made the
Second.
motion.
Second, that's a motion, unless what Hank already did was a motion, in which case I would second it.
You have seconded. Hank did a motion.
Okay.
Okay, so roll call vote. Hank,
Roush, yes?
Steve,
Durant, yes.
Ed,
Bain, yes.
and Edinburgh, yes. So 400, 4 being present. We have a declaration of trust draft ready for town council. Okay, so next on the agenda is the analysis, recommendation, and action items report. And so I'm going to turn this over to Ed, and I will stop presenting.
Okay, thank you. I don't have anything to display. Obviously, the document that I sent out, the days all blur together. I think I sent it out either late Wednesday or yesterday with just some minor. I sent it out Wednesday at let's see, 12:24 p.m. So that's the document that I think is for discussion and vote. I didn't get any feedback from people except for John and obviously Alan, who, contributed significantly as far as any changes. This is not a legal document as much as an informational document, an educational document. So it is, to quote a famous president, it is what it is. And I think at this point, it provides a decent, level of content and information, and addresses, most importantly, some concerns that will no doubt be on people's minds. With the benefits, you just had that up. It's really the
Yep.
How does this benefit? Why should we be doing this? And backed up by various slides showing where we stand currently with our housing stock, the difficulty for many renters and families to afford to live in Westborough. It summarizes our oversight, our governance. It provides information on, well, what do we mean by a trust, which hopefully provides enough information. We can always take questions from the BOS and others, but you know, I think it's good to go. I don't mean to be too self-serving, but you can always add more, but I think this is a good balance. The Appendix B was added from the report from the, was it Enterprise Commission? Trying to remember the name. That shows a variety of studies that I think all support, there you go, various aspects of the need and benefits of affordable housing. So I think it shows that we've done a pretty good due diligence over the past, you know, couple of months. So I'll get off my soapbox and.
Okay. And then really the one material change from the last draft was a suggested addition to the guiding principles,
Right.
which was simply work cooperatively with town boards, committees, and departments.
Correct.
And that should go without saying, but it was suggested that that be said.
Right. And there was just a few corrections. My wife, who is a good looker, picked up a few points or errors or corrections that I've incorporated. But she's the good looker in our family.
Okay.
I thought that report was very well written. I thought it was a well done report. And I think it's going to serve the trust members well in being kind of a beginning document to look at and understand what their role is. And moving forward in the future, the data that's in there is going to help the trust kind of know where they've been and where they're going. So I thought that was very helpful.
Thank you, John.
And I think it was a great job. I mean, just an enormous task and extremely well done. Lots of great data, which I love. I love good data.
Okay. Are there any last minute changes or notations that we need to make?
Just a question on process. Soon we vote positively on this. You would then send it out to the board as an official submission. We would obviously post it as well on the websites.
Yep.
As our, I don't know if final draft is the right word, or I wouldn't use draft. I would say report, because
Yeah. This would be the accepted report.
right, the accepted report, and you know, it's for the BOS to chew on, and AFS to chew on, if you will, as they review and consider, and the planning board.
Yep.
I think that's the third leg of the stool, if you will, to hopefully support the content and points made in the document in prep for town meeting, or in support at town meeting.
Absolutely. So we vote to accept this as our report. It goes to the Board of Selectmen, where we'll present it at Tuesday's meeting. We will provide copies, to the planning board. I would also suggest that we provide copies through the chairs to the Housing Authority and the Housing Partnership Committee.
Yep.
Is there major stakeholders here? I also want to reiterate that every draft of this document has been available for public review and comment on our page on the town website. And as we've updated, we've kept the people following the engagement site informed as well. Mm-hmm. And there's a link to the current draft of the document, as we have each of our meetings. After each meeting, we go in and update those, so that there has been opportunity for additional input from the public and the community in general as well. And we did receive some, and that was forwarded to Ed, so that was very helpful. So at this point, I would entertain a motion.
A move that we go forward with this draft of the report as our final report to the Board of Selectmen, including posting it in appropriate public forums on the web and distributing it to appropriate partners.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? Okay, hearing none, we'll move to a roll call vote. Steve?
Durrett, yes.
Ed?
Bain, yes.
Hank?
Roush, yes.
And me, Edinburgh, yes. So a vote of 4-0-0, 4 being present. We have a final report.
So Ed, if we ever get through this pandemic, first round's on me.
Good. It's being recorded. Thanks to Westborough TV. We have it.
Sorry about that.
We have it on tape.
Forgot about that.
Broadcast live.
Broadcast live. So Hank, you're on the hook.
Sorry about that. Forgot you were
No,
on.
sorry. No take backs.
Very good. Thanks, Hank.
Okay, so thank you. So congratulations, a lot of work, a lot of input and involvement. So it's a great milestone. Thank you. Next
Alan, a curious just a question. I'm assuming that our sunset clause as a committee is with the acceptance or rejection of the town meeting of the articles going forward.
That is correct.
So we're almost done, but not quite.
We're almost done. How does the song go? We're almost there, but not quite yet.
Yep. Okay.
Or as my dad used to say, we'll get there when we get there.
Yeah.
I used to say as we were driving and one of the three boys or all of them would say, "Are we there yet?" As we're doing 65 down I-94, I would say, "Yeah, we're there. You can get out now." It was a ploy to try to save on college expenses.
Okay. On that note, moving forward. I did want to just take a look at the current draft of the 2 warrant articles. In particular, let me just capture the time here. Okay. In particular, Article 9. And here I'll display it. I can make it a little bigger. This was the wording that was, drafted. There've been a couple drafts back and forth. The suggested addition is underlined, which is basically the additional phrase we've added in the Declaration of Trust and our mission statement. Again, for consistency, so that it would be the purpose of which shall be to provide for the creation and preservation of affordable housing in the town of Westborough for the benefit of low and moderate income households and to support efforts to improve housing affordability for our community in general. And so if there's agreement that we want the wording of the warrant article and with respect to the purpose of the trust to match our mission statement and the Declaration of Trust itself, then we would add that in, and I would ask the town manager's office to make that change. These still go out to town council for review.
Can you put up that document? Just to make sure we're reading it together.
Okay. Here, I forgot I wasn't presenting. Here we go. I will present. Okay. Can people see it okay, or does it need to be larger?
Yeah, no, just reading.
Alan, to me, this allows the town meeting, the town legislative body to give specific direction to the housing trust as they draft and prepare their incorporation document. So having the missions match makes a lot of sense.
I agree.
Okay. Steve, you concur?
Yes, I do.
Okay, excellent. So I'll request that change to the warrant article. The Article 10 is the funding article. And no additional changes or modifications there. It reads simply, and this is the wording that came out of the town manager office after working with Leah, the director of finance, to see if the town will vote to transfer and appropriate from free cash the sum of $642,857 and 15/100ths or other such amount as town meeting may approve to the Westborough Affordable Housing Trust, representing the first payment received by the town under the variance granted to Pulte Homes of New England LLC by the Board of Appeals as filed on January 7th, 2020. The only edit in this part was a simple addition to the article information, which is usually also sometimes referred to as the town manager's statement, explaining the history and that part of the reason to make this new payment, this article seeks to transfer the first payment from free cash to the newly created Westborough Affordable Housing Trust to enable the trust to begin its work. And then it still goes on to say that future Pulte payments will go directly into the Del Webb Chauncey Lake Stabilization Fund and can only be appropriated by town meeting vote. So it's just a little bit of clarification, a suggested clarification as to why we're moving the money now. In addition to the view of the finance team that because that money has a purpose to it, it should not sit in a stabilization fund or reserve account, where it would give the impression that it's part of the general reserves or stabilization funds for the town. And we'll get into it later in the agenda, but we actually have something come up that could actually be a first project for the trust. I'll talk about that later in a minute.
I have just one question on this. If, at the very end, future Pulte payments will go directly into the Del Webb Chauncey Lake Stabilization Fund and can only be appropriated by town meeting vote. Is there any limitations on how the town could distribute, if you will, or vote for transfer of those funds to other articles and projects?
So the Del Webb Chauncey Lake Stabilization Fund has restrictions on the use of those funds in line with the variance granted by the ZBA in the direction and the requested guidance that was provided by the Board of Selectmen in the granting of that variance, or I guess not guidance, but concurrence or request. So those funds, the Board of Selectmen had voted that those funds be used for affordable housing and other projects and services related to seniors.
Right.
The actual variance from the Zoning Board of Appeals is broader than that as far as the use of funds. But the stabilization fund, I'd have to go back and look at the specific wording, had a narrower set of purposes involved. So you couldn't use that stabilization fund to buy, a front end loader for the DPW, right?
Right. No, understand.
The town meeting warrant article said to be used for affordable housing and the benefit of seniors.
Right. So that's the restriction on that stabilization fund.
So I believe that becomes the restriction. I'm not aware of how one changes the restrictions on stabilization funds, but I would expect that you would have to appropriate the money out of that fund into some other fund in order to spend it on something.
Yes. So town meeting would vote to either spend the money, allocate money from the stabilization fund to our trust, or, if, for example, there was another project or initiative the town had, they could authorize the allocation of money from that fund for that purpose. And so the money would effectively flow through the operating fund of the town as that money was spent on that project.
So as an example, if there was a, large demand and people turned out to town meeting and there was an appropriate article posted, the stabilization money could be, or some portion of it might be directed to, let's say, support a new senior center.
Correct.
Okay.
Again, the key issue is that whatever the intended use would have to be consistent with the ZBA filing.
Right.
Which I haven't read. I don't know exactly what the ZBA filing said, but town council would go right on back to that ZBA filing and say, is the intended use aligned with that? And if it was, fine. If not, you wouldn't be able to make the transfer.
Well,
okay.
Once the money's in the stabilization fund, it's bound by the restrictions of the stabilization fund. So that's under Mass General Law. So it would be for affordable housing or services to benefit seniors, which is not, it narrows, right? It's not restrictively narrow, but it definitely narrows the options, right? And, there'd have to be agreement on what that meant to put it on, the warrant, right? It has to be voted on the warrant by the Board of Selectmen. Advisory Finance Committee would chime in to say whether they felt that whatever the warrant article was or the expenditure was consistent with the stabilization fund. Town council would offer their opinion, and then of course it goes to town meeting. So there are a fair number of checks and balances as far as those funds go. Okay.
One could predict, though, that there will be some battles.
Yes. It's funny how that happens when there's money involved. Okay.
Oh, really? I never knew that.
So we're a little punchy here this morning, but so are people okay requesting that change to the, we don't actually have to vote on that. It's the article information piece, but are people, comfortable with the warrant articles and the suggested wordings?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Yeah.
Sounds good to me.
So can I have a motion to, the motion would be to recommend that, the Board of Selectmen move forward with the articles as presented, subject to review by town council.
I so moved that as presented, that the articles for the fall town meeting, namely Articles 9 and 10, be forwarded to the selectmen for inclusion in the fall town meeting warrant.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, so roll call vote. Steve.
Durant, yes?
Ed.
Bain, yes.
Hank.
Roush, yes.
And Edinburgh is yes. So 4-0-0. 4 being present, we have the decision, and we have our warrant articles and the recommendation requesting the Board of Selectmen move forward with them as presented, unless town council comes back and says we need some wordsmithing there. Okay, so last part of the agenda, we're a few minutes ahead, is other business next steps and action items. So reviewing, we have people volunteer to step up for the community outreach to other boards and committees. I'll follow up and make sure all of those are scheduled and people are included on the invites and stuff. If anyone ends up having a conflict or wants to participate, there's nothing that says we can't have more than 2 people that participate at these meetings. Let me know. I'll send out a list of dates and times, and people can chime in as well.
Can you, just to make sure that we're all in sync, publish that list with who you?
Yeah, I'll publish the list with who I believe is signed up for,
Right.
dates and times.
Perfect.
And then if people want to join in or people need to change, that's fine too. The big next steps now are continuing the community outreach to garner support, to present to these other boards and commissions, to educate and solicit their support as we head towards town meeting. The warrant articles, and we'll go through the process now of town council review. There'll be votes of support for, formally for advisory finance committee and the board of selectmen. That'll go into AFC's report and recommendations for fall town meeting. The declaration of trust will go out to town council, who will let us know if there are any suggested wording changes. If so, we'll address those at our next meeting, at which point that draft will sit and be on file on the website, and we'll file it as part of our minutes with the town clerk, so the public would be able to review it and look if they want to. The trust document itself would be formally approved and submitted by the trustees after the trust is created at fall town meeting. Along those lines, Alan,
you'll incorporate into the Affordable Housing Trust, or Hank will, or somebody will, hopefully remove as many of the yellow highlighted with the recommendations we voted, so that we have as clean as possible.
Yep, I'll share a clean draft.
Okay, good.
And that'll also be, we'll post that on the websites as well.
Perfect.
So on very quickly on other business, as people think about the role of the trust, there's an interesting potential early opportunity for the trust that I just want to talk about. If we want to go into details, we could schedule an executive session at our next meeting, because it involves the potential purchase, sale, lease, or value of real estate. But there is a affordable home where the initial buyers of that affordable home here in Westborough have moved and are in the process of selling that affordable home. At the time that how that particular unit was made affordable, the general practice as far as the deed restriction for affordability said that if DHCD and the buyer could not find an eligible affordable buyer for the house within 90 days of it going on market, then the seller has the ability to sell the property to an ineligible buyer, and the affordability deed restriction is removed. What happens is, if the home sells for more than its affordable sale price is determined by DHCD, any additional funds go to the town for the for future purpose of affordable housing. So the issue here is that if a home with that deed restriction, if the home doesn't sell, well, the town might get compensated. You've lost a unit of affordable housing in your subsidized housing inventory. This home in question, the 90 days has passed. However, and where we're at right now is the DHCD is talking with the owner. If he gives DHCD permission to continue marketing the property, DHCD could locate an eligible buyer or an ineligible buyer, facilitate the sale, and the deed restriction of affordability remains, and it remains inside of our subsidized housing inventory. The other thing that does is that gives another 90 days. The reason it's believed that the home hasn't sold is that there are some repairs that need to be made to the house with respect to the roof, outside, some siding and trim issues on the outside, and then there's some interior issues that would need to be addressed. And the eligible buyers who've looked at the property and even moved into the P&S and done their inspections have felt that the cost of those repairs on top of the cost of acquiring the property wasn't feasible. And so the reason I mention this now is just is a point of information. Right now, the town itself has an option, still has its right of first refusal to acquire the property. Okay, that would require a vote of town meeting. It's not on the warrant, obviously, for November, and I don't think at this point, without the housing trust already being in place, the town would want to exercise its right of first refusal. The town has done an inspection, a walkthrough of the property, and has a copy of the inspection report for the property as well. Where the housing trust comes into play is if the owner agrees to give DHCD another 90 days, DHCD says they have additional eligible candidates who would like to look at the property. So obviously the best scenario is that an eligible family is able to acquire the property and make the necessary repairs. But it gives DHCD that 90-day window and gives us an opportunity to preserve the affordability covenant. Where the housing trust could come into play is that additional let me be optimistic, when town meeting approves the Affordable Housing Trust, the housing trust could be up and running within that 90-day window. And this is a type of scenario where a housing trust could get involved under its mission of preserving affordable housing, where the housing trust could potentially grant funds or provide a zero or low interest loan with terms that would not put the buyers in immediate financial jeopardy above their means, to make the repairs in order to keep that unit as part of our subsidized housing inventory, as part of the affordable inventory in the town. And so I just, Hank, it looks like you have a question.
Yeah, is the housing partnership in a position to in any way deal with this?
So the housing partnership in their role doesn't get involved because it's a resale unit. So I'm not totally sure of actually I should step back and say I'm not totally sure of what their role could be in this.
I believe they've gotten involved in resale units before, because I know they have been. I know they've been involved when people took out refis in violation of the covenants, and the banks foreclosed, and I know the partnership got involved in those transactions.
So I know the partnership was involved with the covenants and the pricing when this unit went on the market three and a half months ago.
And they're probably the monitoring agent.
They could be. They could be. At this point, our understanding, it's really the way the covenant was written. It's really the homeowner's discretion whether they want to take responsibility for selling the unit or continue to have DHCD manage the marketing of the unit. If they choose to have DHCD, then DHCD has another 90 days to either find an eligible or an ineligible family, and would be able to modernize the deed restrictions. I believe the Housing Partnership Committee would get involved in reviewing and concurring with the updated restrictions on the deed, and that actually comes before the Board of Selectmen at some point too. But I bring it up more as an indication of, here's an immediate here's an immediate opportunity, right? In a situation like this, if the housing trust already existed, the housing trust could buy the property, do the repairs, and resell. The housing trust could buy the property and convert it to a rental unit and either manage it itself or maybe partner with the housing authority. But the housing trust can also provide grant funding or low interest loans to facilitate the repairs. Now, the scope of what a trust can do is repair work that ensures the habitability of the house so it can stay part of the inventory. So, the roof, there are issues with the floor in the kitchen that are a safety issue, those types of repairs, but the trust wouldn't pay for things like new carpeting or repainting, unless it was as a result of other structural repairs that, ensure, that the house is sealed, that there's no mold, that it's properly insulated, that it's up to code and things of that nature. So I just wanted to mention that once the trust is created, it might actually have an opportunity to undertake a small project and help maintain our subsidized housing inventory in town.
Alan, would it be appropriate for one of us to talk with the housing partnership? I'd be willing to talk with them, understand what their situation is and see if there's any options.
Let me check with Christy first to see if they're already in the loop.
Yep.
Because there's been a lot of communications back and forth with DHCD, MCO, who's DHCD is contracted with to do the marketing and the sale, and is effectively the lottery agent, I guess.
I've been involved in a couple of projects similar to this in Holliston and Northborough with housing trusts in those communities, working with as a habitat volunteer. So again,
okay. I'll let
I'd
you know.
I'd be willing to have the conversation. I don't know where it would lead.
Okay, let me just see if they're already in the loop on this. And if not, I'll let you know and you can reach out.
Great, thanks.
Okay. So any other business or action items at this point in time?
So I'm actually aware of a family. I know the house that you're talking about, and I'm aware of a family that missed the deadline, but is really interested in that home. Due to the disrepair, it may be an issue because it's going to max out his income. But I had sent Christy a message in regards to it and hadn't heard back. So I'd love to speak with you further in regards to that. Okay.
We can. Why don't you give me a call right after the meeting?
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Cool. Okay. If nothing else, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
And a second.
Second.
Thank you. And a roll call vote. Steve.
Durant, yes.
Ed.
Bain, yes.
Hank.
Roush, yes.
And Edinburgh is yes. So we are adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a great weekend.
Have a great weekend. Bye-bye.
Enjoy.